Shelley Trotter grew up on the property next door to the one she eventually bought. Both properties are in the Duck Creek catchment on the Maharangi Peninsula. Shelley's father had already begun fencing off Duck Creek and planting trees on his property when Shelley bought Solway Deer Farm. When Shelley moved next door, she embarked on a steep learning curve regarding deer farming. She also began a riparian planting program. With a background in environmental science, Shelley became a key member of the Maharangi Action Plan.
The deer fenced effective area was about 220 hectares. The whole property is about 265 hectares, so we've got that block where the heifers are that's not quite deer fenced yet. And we run approximately 660 breeding hinds and the deer progeny. So at the moment we've got all of last year's weaners on, and we've got probably about 170 rising to hinds that are going to the works in the next few months, and also about the same number of rising to stags. We went to the conference in Methven this year, which was a highlight really for us. It was an amazing conference, but there's a lot of concern in the industry that we're going to lose out to competing land uses, not just dairy, it can be sheep and beef as well. We need probably a slightly higher schedule than we have. I think that it is a real concern because there must be a critical mass for the industry, and the pressures on all sectors of our industry are immense from a financial point of view.
At this time of year we've got the whole farm divided up sort of into 4 different groups that rotate around a set amount of paddocks, and the weaners get the first go at the paddocks and they go in for a couple of days, and then we move them on, and we move them with the maize. It's so stress-free, you just call them and they'll follow you through the gate. You don't have to chase them around the paddock anymore or anything like that. It's pretty stress-free, that size, on us as well as the deer. And then the second mob through will be the rising 2-year-olds. They'll be spikers or replacement hinds or some meat hinds that we're carrying through to finish this spring. And then they're followed up by the mature hinds. And the hinds normally get baleage and grain if we need it, because the grasses, the first 2 have had the main pick of the paddock. It works for us in the winter and stretches our grass out as best we can get it. Keeping the pasture quality up is a big challenge up here. We do mulching, we've got a lot of kikuya, probably about 30% kikuya, and which is good in the summer because when it gets dry we've still got grass, but you've got to keep it under control. And the downside of it is you can't mulch it in when the hinds are set stocked because they've all got their calves. So it's a challenge, all right. We have a mob of cattle. We usually have 40 or 50 heifers, and we buy them in as autumn borns and around November, December, and we'll take them through 12 months and they'll be slaughtered before Christmas this year. The riparian management has been ongoing for 8 years, and it's made a big difference, especially to the water quality when we get big rains. You used to see this creek behind us running down here was always just a brown torrent, and now it's just like dirty tea water. It's really stopping the sedimentation of the river. And the shelter aspect for the deer has become a big one now that the plantations become established. You'll see them sheltering behind it in storms, keeping out of the wind, and sitting under it in the shade in the summer. So yeah, it's good.
I've done a master's degree in environmental science and geography, and I did my thesis work on sedimentation, historical sedimentation, but sedimentation in the Maharangi Harbour. So I was very, very aware from the education side of things that there's a huge value in protecting the waterways, and that for downstream users that there's a huge advantage to us keeping our farm runoff and sediment on the farm. For me, it was just if you're farming, that's what you do. And I think for this farm in particular and this area in general, that the soils, they're heavy clay soils, they are quite fragile and erodible, and to be able to take that riparian zone out of the way of hooves of animals, it makes a huge difference to everything. And then there's huge advantages for the animals as well. because they've now got shade and shelter, and really importantly for the deer, they've got browse. So they've got all this gorgeous green grass to eat and a hedge to nibble at. It's a deer-made hedge. So that's great. It's like there's no downside to that in my mind. Probably 8 or 9 years ago, we were approached by, at the time, Auckland Regional Council about a project that was instigated by the Auckland Regional Council and the Rodney District Council to try and reduce the amount of sediment going into the harbour. So they were pretty delighted when they came across me, because they were preaching to the converted, and they had public money, a lot of public money to fence and plant trees right there and then. It was called the Mahiringi Action Plan, and they wanted action. So I've been quite famously quoted at that stage that if you give farmers fencing materials, they'll fence in the dark, because every farmer wants to look after his riparian zones. Every farmer wants to look after the environment and the land, and they don't all have the resources to do it. So we started fast-tracking our riparian planting program. As part of that Mahiringi Action Plan, we've done several community plantings. We'll have groups of people come to the farm to plant typically about 1,000 trees. We get mostly family groups that come, and if we don't get the trees in the ground, we'll plant them ourselves over the next days or weeks. When I say ourselves, I mean Tony. Yeah, or we've had the whole family out there, and that's been for me a really neat thing, because it involves the community, and really it makes, like, everyone benefits from the riparian planting, and it gives it sort of community ownership. Sure, it's got my name on the title, but those riparian strips are there forever now, and there'll be little kids that were 4 years old when they came to the planting that'll be able to say, "Oh, see that up there? We planted there," and they're just growing bigger and bigger.
This program was made with funding from New Zealand On Air.